the other day, and there was a guy that was going on about chemical castration, but it's a nonsense, right? Because
It doesn't work.
That doesn't take
it
away.
It doesn't get the idea out of their heads, but it's still put that in their heads.
Exactly.
So chemical castration is really useless.
Yeah. Well, look, there's two elements to offending. There's what's called the actus reus and the mens reus. Right, the actus reus, you have to have both elements in order to complete an offence, right? So it is Latin terminology, but the actus reus is the actual physical element to it. So for example, murder, you actually murder someone, you strangle them and kill them. Is it murder? No, because you have to combine it with the intent. Did that person intend to? If they did, you got it. If they didn't, you haven't. But with the S offenders and the PDF files, it's getting rid of that that mens res, and unless there is intense therapy that addresses that broken child, because most of them have been through the cycle of abuse themselves. They just haven't broken it; they've continued it.
Yes, and I agree with that.
Which is an awful statistic. It's 3 generations before it can actually be weaned out the system, and that they haven't had that therapy for that healing, and that there is a therapist who has got, I think she's got something like a 92% success rate in serious child murderers and child offending, but she said there is that small percentage that are evil, and no matter what therapy you put them through, they are evil. But the others, she can do it. And here's an example she gave me. So she gets a guy into therapy. He gets sent to her for therapy, and he's a convicted R-word, R-A-P,
well done, John. Well done.
We get that. But he did it to a child. He did it to an 8-year-old girl, or maybe younger. I think he's a bit younger. And he was a bus driver. And she said he was a really big black guy. He was about 6'5" or something like that. Anyway, she said a big, imposing, strong guy. And she's a middle-aged woman, just average build. And she says to him, "Can you lower yourself down to my level?" So he crouches down to her level, and she goes, "Go lower, go lower, go lower." And in the end, he puts her head at the same level as her groin. And then she says to him, "Undo my trousers." And he's like, what? And she says, "Undo my trousers." And he goes into a panic, right? He starts getting triggered and traumatized, and she screams at him, "You will do as I tell you. You will undo my trousers now." And he melts. He can't do it. He starts crying. And she said, "So you expect a 5-year-old to say no, do you? When you can even say no as a big, grown, strong guy that you are, yet you expect a 5-year-old to say." And it was all to do with the excuse had come that the child could have said no. And she reverses the psychology, and she goes into court and she gives this testimony, and it horrifies the court, but they get her rationale. And she basically bullies them like they bullied their victim. And she makes them understand that it's not for the child to say no. A child should never say no. It's for the adult to say no. It's not the onus on the child. And what the law's done, and a lot of these prevent campaigns of child protection, it's just say no, just say no. And she said these campaigns, these government campaigns, have been written by perverts and PDF files. And she said, I know straight away, whenever they put the responsibility on the victim, it's been written by a pervert. It should never be the victim's responsibility. And, it's getting into that mentality and that mindset, these people. But I agree with you. I think that unless they've been certified by a professional to say that there is no risk after intense therapy, and they've proven it, that they will continue to be a risk, even if they don't reoffend, that they continue to be a risk.
And the irony is I have evidence from 2 years ago of him messing around with another family member. Thankfully not underage, it was an adult. But I was like, what the heck is wrong with? What's wrong with you?
Some people
You know,
can't
what
be told.
in what world is that right? Normal.
I know in their world it is. They justify it. But they'll try anything. They call them.
Yeah.
They don't say that they're heterosexual. They're not bisexual. They're not homosexual. They're what they call trisexual. Anything will be game for them if they can't get the demographic they want. They will try anything, and it's a very twisted, weird logic with these people. It's not like normal criminality.
I mean, I'm just glad I turned out normal because I
You're
don't
awesome,
understand.
Lisa. You're awesome.
I mean, it's like I ask myself the same question. Or I want to ask these people why. Why do you do what you do? Because none of you can give me the straight answer. I even asked him one time. I was like, "Why?"
Well, they do
never had a straight answer.
They do it because they can, because they want to.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. They want to do it, so they do it. Well, look, we all have a choice. We can say no. For some people that have been in that cycle of abuse, it might be more difficult because of cognitive distortion and trauma and everything else, and learned behaviour, all these terrible things that go on to that wounded child. It's a lot harder maybe for them to say no. And others, they're overprotective because they know the damage it does. But we still have that choice to say no. And they choose to do it. They choose to do it. And this is what I was saying, that they're putting the onus, and even their defence team, well, the victim could have said no. Whereas even this big grown man was even frightened to say no to a small woman, yet he expected a little child to say no to him. To stand up and say no to him.
Amazing.
It's
amazing.
And this is their mindset, and this is what there was a therapy session that I witnessed once, and they get 2 PDF files sat down on a chair, right? And they remove one chair, and the other one's job is to convince the one sat down that he deserves a chair and he should stand up and give it to him. And it starts off, and it basically outlines a grooming process. And it starts off, oh, look, stand up, let's see how tall you are, and all these tricks. And then it comes more coercive. If a bribery, if I give you this cigarette, will you stand up? And of course, the guy's brief is not to stand up. And because the acquiescence isn't there, in a heartbeat, this monster comes out, and they have to have security there to stop them attacking the guy sat down. Because, like I said, many times when I interviewed the mother of that child murderer, Baby P, and whilst it was all going her way in the interview, she was sweet and cute and everything with me. But the moment it didn't go the way she wanted, in a heartbeat she turned. And this is what they do with the victims. Because it's not a monster that grooms a kid. It's a nice person that does it. Like a man, when he's chatting up a woman, he tells her everything she wants to hear. But he doesn't mean it. He just wants to do what he wants to do to her. He doesn't care.
Savage.
And that's how it is with the groomers. It's exactly the same mindset. I want to do this, and I will get it.
Completely predatory.
Yeah,
100%.
Well, look, Lisa, I'm sure John will fire your email back to you and everything like that. Thanks for joining us. If there's anything else you want to throw in, let me know. I can circle back to you later, but I've got side chat questions I need to get to. But
thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. How awesome is the call-in function, John?
It's good, isn't it?
It's great. It's like, I keep saying it's 1985 technology landing in 2025. So we've had quite a few questions in the side chat. Now, interesting. This was the first one that I saved. This was from Amy. And she talks about another case that we also spoke about, which was the Michael Barrymore case. Now, Shaun told me things about this case that I don't know if they were not mentioned in the main news, or if I just didn't comprehend them because I was younger. But this case is another one that when John takes you through it's hard to understand.
That was Stuart Lubbock. Now, Terry Lubbock was Stuart Lubbock's dad. And Terry become a really nice friend to me. I got to know Terry because we had a mutual friend, and I spent many hours talking to Terry. Unfortunately, he died, and it was just after the lockdown, and I was forbidden from visiting him on a couple of occasions because he was in an old people's home. and he never stopped fighting for justice. But you know, when you look again, you've got to look at the same people crop up. You've got to look at who was the coroner, and the coroner. I can't remember his name. It will come to me. It's on the tip of my tongue. But the coroner cropped up quite a few times in suspicious decision making, and one was on a young man that was found hanging in a mental institution in that part of Essex, but he had horrific sexual injuries prior to his hanging, and this coroner put it down to suicide.